On the phone with us right now is the gentleman who hired me, and also
Wait a minute, I'm no gentleman.
It was instrumental in starting I-95 back in 1976.
Part of our I-95 alumni.
That's correct. We say good morning to Tom Zarecki. Hey, Tom.
That must be my cue. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
How you doing?
I recognize the cue from a couple of miles away.
I hope so.
Tom,
yes.
Ethan said
I can either ask you questions or you can ask me questions. You go first.
Okay. So Ethan said you were instrumental in the beginning days of I-95. Can you tell people what he means by that?
Yes, I'll try to summarize a 5-hour story into a few seconds here. We put I-95 on the air, as your website says, Christmas Eve of 1976, 6 p.m., Christmas Eve, and we did that so nobody would be listening because we weren't sure what we were doing, and we wanted to make sure we could get it all right. And so the first full day was Christmas Day of 1976. But leading into that, we had to get the music ready and all that stuff. Now, I was the first morning guy at I-95, so I did the first morning show on Christmas Day. I was there for about 5 years. But we had to spend a couple of months getting the music ready to put on the station. And I was not, this was not my first rodeo. I was 24 when we started I-95. But prior to that, the exact year prior to I-95, I worked up in Massachusetts, in Pittsfield, as a morning guy at a rock station for a year. And in the 70s, I worked at WABC in New York, which is a powerhouse, top-rated radio station around the world, WABC Music Radio 77. But I was not a DJ. I was a technician, and I ran the equipment for the very famous, highly paid DJs like Dan Ingram and Cousin Brucey, and even Howard Cosell and stuff like that. But across the hall, which is why I wanted to mention this, across the hall from WABC was WPLJ, which was a brand new budding rock station, and it was covering the greater New York City area. And I was a technician there as well, so I got to meet and work with Pat St. John and Jimmy Fink and Jim Kerr and Tony Pigg, John Zachary, Alex Bennett, a lot of famous people there, Pat St. John. All were my friends that I worked with on a daily basis in the early 70s. Prior to that, I was a DJ at local radio stations in Connecticut, in Torrington, in Waterbury, and then in Southington. And because I started in radio when I was 13, so by the time I was 24, we were getting I-95 going. So I had a lot of experience. Okay, your turn.
Wow.
See, can you tell Tom has a lot of energy?
So I want to ask about the hiring of Ethan. What was that process like? Why did Ethan stand out? I'm assuming you were the program director if you made that choice at that time. Tell us a little bit about hiring Ethan.
It was kind of cool. It was about a year and a half into I-95. In 78, early 78, right, E?
79 was my first air shift.
79,
in February.
79. And we were looking for a nighttime DJ. And then also that happens at a radio station. So we're getting in cassette tapes back when people used cassette tapes. And Ethan sent in one. And we liked it, along with a bunch of other ones. But we liked it so much, we invited him down to the radio station for an interview. We thought he could be a really important, great-sounding personality for our night show. So I'm interviewing Ethan, and we're talking about what he could do and how much he liked the show and what we could do with the programming and the music and that kind of stuff. And a couple of times, Ethan pointed to me and said, now you realize, Tom, all around the United States, DJs are kind of like wandering minstrels. They go from station to station to station, and they don't stay very long. And I'm sure you know many of those. I said, oh, yeah, I know many of those. He says, I don't want to be one of those guys. When I get a job somewhere, I want to stay there. I want to be there for the long haul. You understand? Long haul. I said, okay, that's good. Makes sense to me. And so we kept talking. And then later on, he said, remember, long haul. I want to be here for the long. He mentioned that repeatedly.
No, really?
That aside, we hired him. And I was there another 4 or 5 years, another 2 or 3 years after Ethan was hired. But as the listeners can tell, Ethan is still there 753 years later.
Exactly.
He's still there.
Yeah.
I love that you told that story because that is so his personality, and it's something that you can hear he obviously doesn't remember saying.
Maybe he only said it once, but he definitely said it.
It was a long time
I remember saying it to somebody after the interview. Yeah.
Now, give us maybe your favorite story from your time here at I-95.
I think I'm going to have to make one up here, but I think one of the coolest things was learning about and going to concerts. Because I had been to 1 or 2 concerts. My very first concert was in 1968. It was in high school. I went to see Cream, Ginger Baker, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce on stage at the Oakdale in Wallingford. My very first concert with a bunch of guys I went with. And I went, this is cool. I really like this stuff. Some girl jumped on the stage, tried to kiss Ginger Baker, and they had to pull her off Ginger Baker and that kind of thing. And I said, I got to keep going to concerts. So by the time we started I-95, I had been to a couple others. And I wanted to make sure that concerts were part of what we talked about and what we did. And, of course, that's what I-95 still is today. Ironically, it happened to be right in the beginning of the New Haven Coliseum's birth and growth. New Haven Coliseum was built around just before I-95 started, like a year before. And they only had a few concerts. The very first concert they had was Elvis Presley. And then in 1977, 78, 79, they had 15 or 16 concerts a year, almost all rock artists, which is terrific. And I got to see a bunch of those as part of I-95. And with I-95, we also created concerts that we would sponsor at the Pinecrest in Shelton.
I remember that.
Is that still there, Ethan?
I don't know, but I remember, emceeing some of those shows.
It's an outdoor thing with rolling hills, and there's no seats. There's a stage, and everybody sits around in the lake or on the side of the hills and watches the artists. And that was really cool. My best story from that is we had Bob Marley play one time, and his opening act band was on the stage, and he hadn't come on the stage yet. And there were, a couple of thousand people there. And through the crowd comes this car at about half a mile an hour. And it says police on the side of it. And I went up to him. I said, what do you think? I just entered through the gate. Somebody let them in. I said, what are you doing? He says, we got to go to the stage. We got to get Bob Marley, tax evasion. And so I said, okay. And they're going really, really slowly. They inch their way up to the front of the stage. They get up on the stage to try to find Bob Marley, and he had already taken off. He was gone. That's all I know. I don't know what happened on the rest of that story, but that was an interesting story to tell.
Can you tell?
Concerts were always a big part of this. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell, Lou, that Tom Zarecki does not forget anything? Anything at all. Sure. I forgot everything.
You did, yeah.
Thank you. There's a lot of stuff I have forgotten, I'm sure, but I can't remember what it is because I forgot it.
So tell our listeners, what are you up to today?
Funny you should ask that. I want to tell anybody that it likes to work and likes to have a lot of jobs to keep going. I told someone the other day that said at the college where I teach that you don't have to just have one job. All the years I've had full-time jobs, I always had part-time jobs on top of it. My entire life, I think I've always had a job and then another job and then another job. And currently, now that I'm an older person, I have 3 part-time jobs. That's more than enough for me right now. And I am doing a radio shift up at WJMJ in Hartford. I work Saturday mornings there because it's fun. And they kind of let me play the songs and use my own personality and have games and contests. But I also do social media for a couple of different companies. One is a remodeling company in Wallingford and a couple other places where I write their blogs and that kind of thing. So that's right up my alley. And the third thing I do is I teach at Western Connecticut State University. I'm in the marketing department. I'm a part-time adjunct professor. I've been there about 12 years. And it's ironic there because I started at WestCon back when I mentioned WPLJ and WABC. I was driving from Danbury to 54th and 6th to work at those stations in Manhattan every day, but I was also a full-time student at WestCon. Nobody told me that was stupid. That was too much. That was too much to do, and I did it for approximately 3 years, back and forth and back. I'd drive back up to Danbury, go to sleep, and then try to go take classes. So ultimately, I stopped going to WestCon for a while, and a few years later, I said, I got to get a degree in something. I went back. Took me a bunch of years. I got my undergraduate bachelor's degree. And then a few years later, I was working at RCS, a company that makes radio software for radio stations all around the world.
We remember. Well, RCS was the program that we had when I got here, but we've actually come back all the way around to it because they created the software that we use now.
What, for Zeta?
Yeah.
Zeta. Absolutely, I'm familiar with Zeta. They just had it at WJJ, too. But Selector was the original music scheduling program that the genius who invented the company came up with. He used to be a computer guy at WNBC in New York, back when there were barely any computers. And he would watch the DJs try to do file cards to keep track of the songs they were playing, just like we did at I-95. We didn't have a computer.
Right.
You had to play a song. As you remember, Ethan, you would put your initials and the day and the time that you played it, like you guys played Don't Fear the Reaper a little while ago. You put 8 a.m., on February 2nd, and you put it in the back of the stack, and then that gets the rotation going. This guy, Andrew, created computer software to schedule music, and it took off big time. And by the time I got there, they already had thousands of clients. I was there for about 12 years as director of marketing. It was great. They sent me to radio trade shows all around the world, as well as the United States. And you learn a lot about meeting people and how to get along with people. Whether or not you like the people doesn't matter. You got to get along with people, and that's part of the process here. But I'm glad to see you were using Selector back then and continue to use their products now. And what's interesting, the last thing I wanted to tell you about my process is I almost never interviewed for jobs. In most cases, people would find me and say, hey, are you interested in doing this? Which is unusual. I'm not sure why, but that happens time after time. Even at WestCon, the guy who asked me to teach there said, by the way, I used to listen to your radio show when I was in high school and you were in high school. You didn't know me, but I listened to your show every week when I was at high and then we were standing talking to each other as students at WestCon. And then, 28 years, 30 years later, he is interested in hiring me. And once I went back to WestCon again to get my master's degree, which I did. And once you have a master's, you can teach people to go in for their undergraduate degrees. So I teach a communications course, a couple of different communications courses and marketing courses at WestCon. I have a marketing course called e-commerce, which is all juniors and seniors. We talk about buying things online as opposed to buying things in a store and comparing the two. I have one of those classes today, in fact. I also deal with a bunch of the incoming freshmen, brand new college freshmen that have never dealt with college before. So we have to talk about the real basics, like how to get along with each other. I make them all stand up and say hi to each other, and they're not used to that, believe it or not. It's all part of the process.
Wow. Tom, I love this stuff. Sure. Ethan and I wanted to find another way to celebrate the history of this place, a history that I very much respect, and I know Ethan does. So we were excited that you were able to come on the show and talk with us for a few minutes.
He's the man who has done everything in the business of radio, and the man who was instrumental in putting I-95 on the air on December 24th, 1976. Tom Zarecki.
I want to thank you guys for maintaining the standards and exceeding the standards that we had set back then. We learned a lot about rock radio and picked out the songs and all that kind of stuff. But you guys continue to do that, and then you add in the personality content that you provide, like the missed headlines and all the other stuff that you do. That really adds a lot of depth to the radio station, and that's why people listen. They want to relate. By the way, when we started I-95, last thing, and I'll go. Okay. When we started I-95, everybody should remember there was no internet, no cell phones, no streaming services like Hulu or Netflix, no social media, no podcast, no satellite radio. So people had to listen to traditional radio to get a feeling of community. Oh yeah, everybody likes these songs, and that's part of what we built back then.
Well, let me tell you something. I've got a photo of you and me. I think we're doing an air guitar contest at Peaches.
Oh yeah, that's it. Peaches.
Peaches, yeah.
Right.
I'm stealing that off your Facebook. I'm going to use that for the article.
I was very thin then, and you were very thin.
So was I. Yes.
Very good. I don't know if people know air guitar contests. They still do them occasionally, but it was fun. And you guys also got the Meatloaf picture I sent you, right?
Yes,
Meatloaf,
I got that.
Yep. He never actually did a concert for us, but for some reason, I can't remember why, he ended up doing a benefit baseball game where he pitched and hit a home run and did other stuff. And he was, I got to talk to him a couple of times. And the best thing I could say about Meatloaf is he was just a regular person. And that's what you need, particularly if you're a music star, an entertainer. You got to just sound like whoever you're talking to.
Tom, we got to take off. We want to thank you for coming on and
we appreciate you
going through your life in 15 minutes.
Yeah, not easy. Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Ethan. Really appreciate it.
Take care, Tom. Yep. Bye-bye.